So how we group together types of objects in Unity is we assign them a tag. So we're inside the barrier prefab, which means every change that we make in here will affect every single one of these blue prefab items. So I'm going to click on tag, and then none of these really are the thing that I'm looking for, so I'm going to add a tag, and then I'm going to type in barrier. Save it. There it is. So now I can go back in here and tag this as barrier. And that should propagate to every one of my barriers. See? And it shows that they are all of type or tagged with barrier, the descriptor barrier. So back in here, we have to have some form of code that asks the question, are we hitting a barrier? And if so, run this code. So we already know how to make an if statement up here. So we can go if, and we get the collision data, collision dot collider, because that's how we got its name before, dot, then we're looking for its tag. So if the collision's collider, the thing that we collide with, its tag equals, and we're using a double equals to say that something is equivalent to. So like 2 is equivalent to 1 plus 1. Doing this with 1 equal sign is saying assign the value of this to this. So make this equal this. So 2 equals shows for equivalency and checks to see whether or not this is equal to this, versus 1 equal sign tells the program to assign this to equal the same as this. All right, so we have collision collider.tag equals equals, and then in quotes we want to name the tag that we used, which, if I remember correctly, we can go back into our barrier with a capital B. So we'll go into here, barrier with a capital B. So if the collider's tag is barrier, open brackets, transform the position from the player's position to the start position, and then just close these brackets. And you'll notice that these things will actually kind of light up, which is kind of convenient. So we can tell that this one starts here, even tells us a little bit of what it looks like and what the entire if statement is. So let's save that and see if it works. Here we go. Sweet. Boop. Well, it definitely worked. It keeps resetting us to the end there. Let's just make sure. Why don't we go back into the code there and have it also give us a message that says to log resetting position. And then we have to put that inside double quotes, resetting position. So we'll go back in and see what happens. Click this. Hasn't reset yet. Boop. Boop. Definitely reset. So what's happening is our player cube is moving forward, and as it's moving forward, it'll keep going until it hits something. Once it hits something, give it a second. boop, it'll reset. But it keeps moving. When it resets, it doesn't exactly stop. So its momentum is continuously moving forward. Its rotation is continuously moving forward. Boing. And therefore, our code is technically working amazingly. However, it's just not doing exactly what you want it to do. So if you're curious what I was just doing there, I hit play, and I paused it. I can go back into Game Asset if I want to. This just helps me see kind of where everything is lined up. And then I'm stepping through every individual second or every individual frame of this game. It's got to just keep going over and over using this button right here until I hit something. Once I hit something, it resets it back. You can see kind of why I like having it look like this, because then I can see kind of what it's doing in relation to everything else. So, awesome. It works. Doesn't probably look like what we want it to look like, but it definitely works. So, now what we have to do is very simply make it so that when it resets, its velocity, its forward motion, and its rotational motion all stop. That's actually really easy to do. We're going to go back into our code, and when this happens, we're going to tell it to player dot, we want to stop its velocity, right? Its motion in all directions. So there's velocity. We're going to set it to equal to 0. But we have to set it equal to 0 in all 3 directions, right? So that is, remember back up here when we're looking at these forces, we could set its float x, y, and z. There's a couple other ways that we could have done this as well. One of the ways that we could edit this was using a vector 3. A vector 3 is simply a container that holds 3 different numbers. In this case, for x, y, and z, right? So we actually have a method in here called vector 3, and a little shorthand in there that allows us to set all of those to 0. The reason why I know I want this is because when I hold this over, the velocity says that it wants a velocity to set in vector 3. So we just typed in a vector 3 and asked it to go 0. Sweet. So that is our player's motion velocity, straightforward velocity, up, down, left, right. We also want to zero out its rotational velocity. That just says rotation. How about angular velocity? So angular velocity is another way of saying rotational velocity. So I'm going to do the same thing. Vector 3 dot 0. All right, let's see what that does for us. Press save, go back in here, boop. Ooh, that looks like it works out pretty well, actually. So now every single time we start and go, regardless of how we hit it, looks like we're starting right fresh over again. So let's play this a few times, make sure that it actually works. Oh, that was weird. Hold on, let's go back into that. It seems that if I hit this at just the right way, that our cube changes angles. And now I am sideways. That's not good. So what we now have to change then is when we reset, we not only need to have our start position's position, but we also want to have its rotation. Because remember, our rotation for our start position is already set to 0, 0, 0. So what we'll do is we'll go back into our code, and up here where it says player's transform position, we'll also put player transform rotation. And we'll set that equal to the start position transform rotation. Add a semicolon at the end to make sure that we're all good. And let's go back and play it. All right, seems like it works. So now that we have it so that it knows what to do every single time it hits a barrier, now we just have to figure out what it does after it has completed the level successfully. And that's our next course. Catch up with this, make sure that everything works and that your player can reset every single time it hits a barrier, and I'll see you in the next class.